Okay, and we're live.
Hello.
Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the third and final book reading club session with Antonio. And I'm already unhappy because we're going to miss you here with us. So before we start, I would like to ask Antonio to introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Antonio. I'm a Java champion. So I do champion stuff with Java, like writing champion books, doing champion consultancy, doing champion trainings, doing champion talks at champion conferences, and mostly in Java and Java EE. So that's me.
Awesome. Myself, I'm Roberto Cortez, and I'm here sponsored by Tommy Tribe. They are happy. They are happy enough to give me time to do these awesome hangouts with you guys. I also like to work on Java E, so that's a pretty good deal having Antonio here to explain us some of his own stuff. And now we're hopefully got Ivan back. He was having some issues. You got right on time, Ivan. How are you?
I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yes. So reboot helps.
When you have
Yeah.
a Windows box, you reboot it and it works.
Yeah. So Ivan was having some trouble with his Windows box.
Yeah,
Anyway,
sorry for being late.
But even when you talk, it's the mic on your Windows box, not on your headset. So talk closer to the.
Okay.
Yes.
so before we start, let's just tell you that you can join us on RC. Please go to our website, virtualjug.com, and you're able to join an RC channel over there. So you can send us questions right on the RC channel, and we'll happy to relay them back to Antonio. Um, Ivan, can you remind us what's going to be today's topics about the book?
Yes. Today we are going to discuss the front-end side, so to say, of the Java E spec. So we are going to talk about things like JSF, which is the MVC stack of Java E, XML and JSON, and the two web services stack, the SWAP web services and the Restful web services.
Okay, awesome.
No JMS. It's the last chapter of my book. It's the best one.
The JMS, we discussed it last time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, but if there is, I mean, even though we're going to cover these topics because we haven't covered them before, anyway, I want to encourage our viewers that you can send pretty much, since it is the last session, you can send any questions from any piece of the book anyway. But we're going to try to focus more on the topics that we haven't covered so far. Before even going into the book itself, I'm gonna make like a little bit of a joke here. So on the last session, we were discussing a little bit about Scala stuff, and then there were some people here on the Meetup website on our sessions that were asking Antonio what was his problem with Scala. So, Antonio, can you please enlighten us?
Oh no, I can't remember, but yeah, it was like a joke, and I made a joke about Scala. I have nothing against Scala. I have nothing against, not much, I think, except one thing, fashion. I think it's something that comes a lot when I talk to people. I hate fashion. That's why I'm always dressed in black. Um, and I always tell my daughter to be careful with fashion. And developers are fashion addicts. So Scala is good. Everything is good. A hammer is good to do things. Every tool is good. It's just the misusage of this tooling. And developers tend to be a bit of fashion victims. And when there's a new tool, even if it's in alpha or in beta, they use it, they play with it, and they use it everywhere in all the projects. So I always say the same thing. I don't know about you guys, but my customers and my projects is mostly about reading data, processing data, and storing data. Not that difficult, really. And sometimes I see things that really irate me, and I've seen Scala in places where it just doesn't make sense. The entire team works in Java. There's 2 or 3 guys who have discovered this new tool. They put it in a place that just doesn't make sense at all. And when they leave, well, the entire team has to rewrite it. And so I have nothing against Scala. I have nothing against no framework. I really have something about our fashion victims. And as I always say, our job is becoming more and more important. There's IT everywhere, not just in computers now. There's even IT on the bloody fridge. So we have to behave accordingly. And I wish my fellow developers would be a bit more professional and less fashion victim. So Scala is a good tool for a certain job. And Java is not the perfect tool. It happens that it's a tool that can be read by a lot of people. If we don't like it or not, there's 11 million people using Java. So if you want a common ground, if there's a team of 20 people, hey, if Java is our Esperanto now in 2016, let's use it. If there's something else to do with another language, with another framework, let's do it too. So that was just a bad joke. I like bad jokes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common problem so far. That is, if you pick, I'm not going to deviate a lot about our main topic, but I make this joke that if you pick up like a random word on the dictionary, you're gonna get a JavaScript framework out of it. Anyway, now people are going to ask me why I hate JavaScript or something like that. Anyway, so Ivan, can you please start with the proper book questions, please?
Okay. So let's start with everybody's favorite, JSF. I know that everybody likes JSF. So JSF is said to be component-based MVC framework. So it's an MVC framework, but it's component-based. And so far, Java doesn't have action-based framework like Struts or Spring MVC, for example. However, with Java EA, there will be one, and it will be coming with JSR 371. And do you follow that? And what is your opinion? Is it too late for it as the combination of HTML plus JSON on the front end and JSRS on the back end is already well supported?
Yeah, to be honest, this specification might arrive a little bit late, unfortunately. Struts is very old. I think it was 99 or 2000, very old. We know how to do action-based stuff, and yeah, maybe we should have specified that earlier. But it's funny, this specification exists because there was a survey and a lot of people asked for it. So, well, then I remember when this MVC specification was, when people were brainstorming about that, there was this idea of this MVC spec should work for everything. There was even this idea of we could use it in Swing, And I remember the Red Hat guys had a bit this idea of having a very abstract MVC framework, but they didn't take the lead. So Oracle took the lead of this MVC, and very, very quickly they based it on JAX-RS. So it looks like this specification will be on top of JAX-RS and will help us. So yeah, at the moment we do JSON and JAX-RS in the back and JS in the front. With that, we could have MVC on top of JAX-RS. That's the plan. But to be honest, I haven't followed much this specification. It has started. I haven't seen much actuality news on this spec lately, but yeah, let's wait and see.
Okay, and continuing on this area, what are the benefits of the component-based MVC frameworks like JSF over the action-based? When would you pick the first type over the second one, the component-based over the action-based?
I know that, so leaving the MVC, but when you do Spring MVC or, REST backends with JavaScript front ends, it's really good for 80% of the stuff. But lately, I've mostly worked on JSF projects, and very complex, so complex that it's even a shame that it's Java server faces. It should have been done with Swing. When you have a very complex interface, and I'm talking about heaps of pages, heaps of actions, mostly not for website, but more for an intranet. I've worked on a project a couple of years ago, and it was in banking, and the users have to create curves of points, so-called points, and these points are based on very complex, financial things. So for a user to create such a curve, it will take you a couple of weeks. And the wizards are very complex. Each point, creating a point on a bloody curve takes an hour because you have to pick up data, transform this data, analyzes this data, etc., etc. Thank God we had JSF with at the time Spring Webflow, because it was mostly wizards, very complex wizards. With you click on a button, you are in a different subflow, you do something, half an hour later you come back to the previous flow you were in with all the data. It's very complex. So at the moment, my knowledge of JavaScript is not enough, but I don't see how you can create these very complex applications in JavaScript yet. And I remember James Gosling a few months ago saying, how you would create complex systems like an IDE. Look at our IDEs and look at the IDEs online. There's still a lot of work to be done. Same thing, he was giving this example of image processing. Yeah, you can crop an image online, you can size it, but that's pretty much, so at the moment, I think I would use a component-based and JSF when it's very complex business.
Yeah, I think that sometimes people that just try to stuff things that shouldn't go to the web or shouldn't be like a web-based framework into applications, where it just be like just some desktop applications that could be done with Swing or even other frameworks. Maybe what's the thing that came to replace Swing? I forgot the name.
JavaFX.
JavaFX. Yeah, maybe JavaFX. I don't know.
Yeah, there's actually another JSR which is not part of Java, JSR 377, which is led by Andres, and it's basically focusing on the application, something like application platform or something like this. So it's really trying to combine the experience from all these Swing and Griffon and the other desktop and mobile application platforms, and it's again doing the things in MVC-like style.
I've just finished a project at a customer. It was in the health business, and it was Swing. In the chemistry, you had this very thin screen, tactile, so the users could input stuff. Very sleek, very, very, very nice. and it was Swing. I was amazed to see Swing back in 2016. But hey,
Yeah, awesome.
Okay. Roberto, any questions from the?
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. Let me ping the people here again. So you can just go ahead.
Okay. Staying again in the JSF area.
I love it. I love JSF.
Okay, so something like an explanation to explain the different concepts here. So in JSF there are JSF implementation libraries like Muhara and MyFaces on one hand, and on the other hand there are JSF component libraries like RhymeFaces or RichFaces. Yeah, RichFaces not anymore, but anyway. So
Ice faces, and there's another one. But yeah.
So can you explain the difference between these two concepts? And yeah, let's first start with that.
Okay. Yeah, there's, when you think of JPA, there's three implementations: OpenJPA, Eclipse Link, and Hibernate. Let me take you even another example: bin validation. It has two implementations: Hibernate Validator and OpenBV. So Mojara and MyFaces are the only two implementations of JSF. But then, even if when you use Hibernate Validator or OpenBV, you have a set of constraints that are already there, like null, not null, past, future, pattern. And then when you need something else, you go online and you discover there's other constraints at credit card number, at email. So there's an API to create constraints, and out of the box, the spec gives you a few: not null, past, future. Same thing happens with JSF. The specification tells you that Mojara and MyFaces are the entire runtime, but they come with a few components: input text, common buttons, links. But then you go online and you can have extra components. So you can have a calendar, you can have a captcha, you can have all these things. So really, Mojara and MyFaces are the entire runtime, and it comes with a basic set of components. And prime faces, ice faces, rich faces, and there's another one I forgot. Those guys do not implement JSF. They use the JSF APIs to create extra components. So, mostly on my JSF projects, we use one of these implementations, either Mojara or MyFaces, and we go and grab the components out of the web, mostly prime faces, because they are really good components. They have a lot of them, and maintain. Plus, we create our own. So that's the difference between Mojara and MyFaces runtime and prime faces, rich faces components.
Okay.
Do you believe that you were able to develop an application without using any of these component-based libraries?
No, because any component, any application will have a calendar, a date. You don't want to write a date picker, and out of the box, it is not in the specification. So even for the calendar, you will pick it up. Then the tables. It's very, very, very common to have a list of things that you can sort by column 1, column 2, ascending, descending. You can filter, common things. And these components are very complex, and they are already done. Plus, they are used in most of the applications. So no, if you arrive in a customer and the first job is please, can you implement a calendar? Well, charge them 10 days, go back home, and bring the Prime Faces calendar.
Mhm. Yeah, that was exactly my point, because I remember, I think it was also with the calendar with JavaFX that, like, on the last version they say, hey, we now have a calendar as a component. So for me it's kind of like a weird thing, because I actually I don't know, maybe it was like 2007 or 2008. My team, and this was like just a side story. My team adopted Git, and I had to implement a calendar for Git. Um, and so my actual question is, for me, it doesn't make much sense that, okay, we actually have, or what's your opinion about it, is we're having all these web frameworks, but then they're not ready to actually develop an application because they are missing the core components that you need to develop a proper application, like, as you say, the calendar or a list. Of course, if you want to like have like a simple form with like a couple of input fields, yeah, you can do it, but that's not going to be a really enterprise application. So my take on it is, why don't we have these things out of the box right away, and then we have to wait for other businesses to come and actually give us these components, or have to implement it ourselves?
You know, JSF suffers from its history, like EJBs. So people put that apart. But if I want to be productive, I will create a page in JSF. You can do it in a few clicks. You can have an amazing, complex, and rich user interface. Then again, I'm not a JSF guy. I'm really not good at all. JS and JavaScript, sorry. And when I work, most of my business, most of my customers is working on complex intranet apps, not a single page website or things like that. So when you want the complexity, I was talking about the flows, the subflows, very complex. JSF is the perfect tool. And again, if you want a decent page with components that are quite complex, in a couple of hours, you can have a pretty amazing thing. But again, it's my lack of knowledge of JS.
Great. Are we done with JSF? Can we move to some other topic, or do you still have any questions about JSF, Ivan?
Yeah, I still have, but maybe let's change the topic so there's some more time for the others.
Yeah, I think we should go next with JAX-RS, since it's like I guess it will be one of the most popular specs out there at the moment.
Okay.
So to kick that in, I actually have a question here from our audience, and this kind of mixes a lot of different concepts. So grabbing the very popular microservices architecture, of course, we will have to speak about microservices with JAX-RS, right? So we have Eja. He's asking, can you explain what's the best way to manage transactions across heterogeneous components like Restful Services, JMS, and a database, assuming that you have multiple JAX-RS services running in different containers and running microservices and a microservice architecture?
Yeah, JTA for the transaction works good when you have a transaction manager. The database has a transaction manager. MOM, middleware-oriented message as transaction management. So it's very easy. Out of the box, you take a class, you put add transactional, you persist something in the database, you send a message on a queue. If one of them fails, if you have an XA data source on one side, and the good driver on the other side, it works. You can say, I persist something in the database, it fails, therefore my message is not sent in the queue, and vice versa. So JTA is meant for that since day one. Now, with this era of microservices, I'm invoking this guy over there and this guy over there and that guy over there. I do 3 posts, and I want them to either succeed all or fail all. It's not possible. You know, at the moment, transactions are not meant for that. So out of the box with Java EE, no, you can't do it. And I'm not even aware of other frameworks that will do it, because it's quite funny when you read about microservices, when you see what's happening in this world of microservices. Everything is no transactions, no SQL database, happy and free, no contract. I send you JSON one day and another format another day, and it will work. Whoa, great. So I haven't seen anything like that. You do 3 posts. Well, the third, fails. Bad luck. The first one has succeeded. You can't roll it back. Yes, but you have to do it on your own. You have to go back and say, oh, by the way, I've just posted something. I need to delete it now. So not out of the box, no.
Yeah, I'm guessing that these kind of issues, you'll have to actually design your architecture so you don't require a transaction to do it, because it's going to be a nightmare to manage that transaction in that particular way. If you have to post stuff and then figure out if all the other endpoints were able to post, and then you come to these problems with two-phase commits, because you'll have to implement a mechanism like that for REST.
Yep.
It will be like a nightmare. So, I'm not even sure if we can talk about having transactions on REST endpoints, because that seems to be the kind of defeats the whole proposal of RESTful resources, right?
REST is not just an API. It's not just JAX-RS. It's also a few patterns and a way to do things. Microservices is the same thing. There's frameworks out there to help you, but even to discover your services. In Java EE, we have JNDI. Even there's some implementations who created distributed and clustered JNDI, so you can share the same JNDI tree and synchronize it through clustering. But today, with this era of microservices, you have thousands of services. Where are they? Well, we had something like that called UDDI in SOAP, but we still have nothing in JAX-RS, in the microservices way. So microservices is not just APIs and frameworks, it's also patterns, way of architecturing your application.
Do you expect that some of these patterns should be implemented in the spec, or do you think that should be something that should be left out and have vendors deal with it on their proprietary products and so on?
JNDI is a discovery model. So we could perfectly think of the future of JNDI. It reminds me JMX. JMX is is very powerful mechanism to manage your managed beans, your M beans. Unfortunately, we still don't have a spec with HTTP calls. It would be good to administer your M beans through another protocol, and we've been doing that. So it would be good. And there was this idea of JMX 2.0. You could have an MBean, and it will automatically have an HTTP interface, a so-called REST interface. So there was this idea of, we already have JMX, let's extend it to have REST interfaces out of the box. We could think of something like that with JNDI. It's a discovery mechanism. Some implementations have used it in cluster for decades, so we know how to discover stuff. and synchronize a JNDI. So we could think of something, a future for JNDI in this microservice world, but it's not the case at the moment.
Cool. Ivan, so you can go ahead with your next question.
Okay, cool. Now let's talk a little bit about API design and in the context of JAX-RS. So usually you have your business model designed in a way of JPA entities and CDI or CDI beans or EJBs. But when it comes to JAX-RS, you have there these JAX-B classes, JAX-B annotations, and you can also manipulate a little bit your API so that it can return, for example, XWS RS core response that packages that is used like an envelope of the payload of the return type. So you can do both. You can put the JAX-B annotations on your JPA entities and make them JAX-B aware, or you can create a different parallel set of entities that are simply like value. What was the term?
Value object, DTO, or data transfer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Data transfer objects, right? And same with your business APIs, where you can have parallel API for the REST resources. So what would you recommend here? To have everything in one place with all the annotations, or have parallel APIs?
Mm-hmm. Well, the beauty of Java is you can do whatever you want. So if you have something simple, again, we're coming back to microservices. Let's do smaller things easier. Well, if things get easier, and if your service is meant to be a microservice with a REST interface and that's all, design your entity based on your REST interface. If you have something simple, easy, put your JPA entity and, as you say, put a JAX-B annotation and return it. If you have something richer and more complex, that doesn't work in the long term. So again, if you need to make things quick, you can. I've seen a lot of projects where you never see a 1.0 in production because after a few years it just run dead. So if you can get something out there, a 1.0, very easily and quickly, do it short. Do it as quick as you can. But it's true that in the long term, usually you start to decouple things because your business becomes more and more complex. You have more and more APIs. You even have cases. There's cases where you have a REST interface for phone and a REST interface for tablet. So this idea of one REST interface to rule them all, even that sometimes doesn't work. You have cases where you have 3 gets, but the API is not the same if it's a website, if it's, even batch. I've seen batch that consume REST APIs. So you have some times where your business is still the same, but your facade, your REST APIs to do one thing, have several REST interfaces. One for the phone, one for the batch. So again, use the right way for your right application. What I really hate is these golden architects that write a rule on a piece of stone with gold letters, and you must apply that on all your projects. These architects are not good. It's good to know that there's different ways of doing things, and it's good to know that in this case you can use this way, and on the other case, the other way. And when you play more and more with REST, you realize again that it's better to return a response because you can play with it. You can put the body, the entity, in your response, but in the response itself, you can do other things and play with HTTP headers,